I remember the first time Dr. Tozer said to me, he said, you know, Brother Len, I have never heard a sermon on worship in my life. Well, I happen to be 79 years of age, and I've been going to church, to meetings for 75 years. I've never heard a message on worship. But also active in the outer court, serving the people in the outer court. We never get into the Holy of Holies. In the outer court, there's daylight. In the holy place, there's candlelight. In the Holy of Holies, there's no light. Pitch black. No windows. As blackness can be. Gross darkness. And it stays like that unless the glory of God comes. But when the Shekinah comes, it's blinding. You know why we don't miss the glory of God? Because we've never seen it, that's why. We're so used to meetings. We're so used to being happy. We're used to some dumb guy getting up there and say, let's all stand and raise your hands and worship. You don't worship God standing up. You worship God on your belly.
Side 2.
Every time they worship, from Abraham down to the Revelation, every time they worship off face downwards. And then again, Dr. Tozer said one day, let other people do what they like. You and I will worship God face downwards. If you're down on your face, you can't get distracted with anything round about. But it's only when we're in the Holy of Holies, in the holy place. Do you know what worship is? Speechless adoration. We're going to be startled when we get to heaven and see some people get far bigger rewards than the big TV boys and these boys that run around the world. I've all due respect for World Challenge. What about Van Challenge? What about Tyler Challenge? Jesus said, begin at Jerusalem. That's the hardest place, isn't it? In your own church, in your own home, in your own life. I've told you, but Dr. Tozer said, Len, I come in my office at 8 in the morning, and I lay on my belly till 9, 10, 11, 12, and even 1 o'clock. 5 hours, and I've not said one word of prayer, and I've not said one word of praise. What do you do? Adoring Him. Concentrating on His majesty, concentrating on His holiness, concentrating not just when I sing, great is thy faithfulness. Very lovely. When you last tell God that on your belly by yourself, you look at His faithfulness. He didn't cut you off when you committed that horrible sin. He extended His mercy, He extended His peace, He extended His joy. Do you wonder the Apostle Paul, the man I think lived nearer to God than anybody else except the Son of God? He said, with all I have from Him, and he drew more from God than anybody, but he says, I'm a debtor to all men. Does it take a missionary meeting to stir you up with compassion for the lost? It won't if you go to hell. It won't if you realize that there's a million roads into hell, there's no way out. It's going to be the permanent residence for billions of years, for billions of people. Oh, but we stay home and we get excited. We give a few tracts out. It'd do a lot of us a lot more good if we stayed home on our bellies and worship and listen to God. I'm not saying you can't learn at school. You can. Usually don't learn too much. A man called me tonight and he said, Brother Ravenhill, I want to tell you about my situation. He said, I've just started preaching in a church. And he said, after I preached the first night, an old deacon stood up and said, listen, we're not doing it that way. We've done it this way for 20 years. He said, I've been in this pastorate for 2 years. I came overflowing with joy from the seminary. But he said, I've learned more about people in 2 months in this church than 3 years in seminary. Because he comes right up to people who don't want to be moved in God. They want eternal security to become infernal security. You say, well, I believe in once saved, always saved. Well, tell me this in God's name. Do you believe in once lost, always lost? Once you get through the gates there into hell, it's forever and ever. Once lost, always lost. There's no mercy there. There's no grace there. There's no pity there. Right. It's all agony. It's everything that's antagonistic to God. I'll tell you what kind of company you're going to have. You know what people say, well, don't take it too literally. Hell isn't really literal. Because if hell's literal, of course, you couldn't be burning forever and ever. Couldn't you? No, flesh burns. Are you sure? Well, logically, forget the logic. I happen to know 3 boys that went into a furnace and they burned a long time, but they didn't roast. Right. You say, well, I'm going through the fire. Do your world of good. Don't come to me and ask for prayer. I won't pray for you. You're going through the fire. You know what it's going to do? What did it for the 3 Hebrew children? Their hands were bound, and they didn't have a penknife. And the feet were bound, and they couldn't cut it. So the Lord sent the fire of the devil, and he liberated them. Isn't it nice when... Oh, you say it's crazy anyhow. Of course, you made your mind up about that 10 minutes ago, but that's all right. Do you really believe that God would employ the devil to make you into a saint? Yes. Oh, but God protects us. He promises he'll do this. Yeah, Jesus says, "Hi, Peter, how are you?" Fine. Well, I've got some news for you, Peter. When you get down the road there, Satan's going to jump on you. Satan hath desired thee to sift his wheat. That's what he was going to do, but I said, Satan, you go back to hell and leave my precious child Peter alone. No, he said, you need Satan to work in your life. Our dear principal told us he'd been preaching in a village church, and as he came home, you won't know anything about this, I guess. As he came down from the church to go catch the little choo-choo that would take him back home, he passed the door, actually, of a blacksmith. Typical old blacksmith there, pumping away to get the furnace going. And he had a man called a striker. He had a big, hairy chest, barrel-chested fellow, and he had a huge hammer with a big head on it. And the blacksmith pointed to something, and he took that piece of metal with a pair of tongs and put it in the fire. You know, there's a good illustration there. You know, first of all, when you get saved, God puts you in the fire. If you stay long enough, the fire gets into you. I remember watching a blacksmith. He put a piece of metal into the furnace. A black bar would go in, and then he'd pull it out after a little while, and it was getting whiter and whiter, and then he'd pull it out. In fact, when it stayed right in the heart of the fire, you couldn't tell the difference between the fire and the metal. But there's an anvil, you know, with a point at the end. The man gets hold of that piece of metal, he puts it in, he has a tiny hammer just about this length, but when a boy could not. And he hit like that, and this big blacksmith comes and he blasts right down on that piece of metal like that. He puts it in the fire and he takes it out. Puts it in the fire and he puts it in water to temper it, as they say. And the more it goes in the fire and the more it goes in the water, it becomes a better quality of material. But little by little, something was being worked into this piece of iron. And Mr. Chadwick said, I watched that big man swinging that great big hammer till his chest was beads of perspiration, and it was running with perspiration. And he said, I said to the blacksmith, sir, why don't you change jobs? Why don't you do some of the heavy work? Why do you let him touch the metal with that little hammer? And he said, he smiled, he said, you know, the blacksmith, are you? He said, no, what are you, a preacher? Oh, well, that explains the dullness, of course. A preacher. But he said, sir, that man's getting tired. He's been beating with that hammer, knocking. Yeah. He said, but do you know what? He doesn't really know what he's doing. I have a contract to make a pair of gates for a mansion that's been built miles away from here. Notice how this metal's beginning to turn and get beautiful. Look at those gates. Where's one gate finished? It's all curls in it, even got flowers on it that I made out of metal. All I do, I just point there, and if I point one, the man hits the metal this way. If I point twice, he hits it that way. If I make another sign, he hits it so it bends over the end. And he says, I'm the designer. I pay him just to knock this metal into shape. And it doesn't worry him. He works all day smashing away at this metal. And Mr. Chadwick said to the blacksmith, thank you, sir, that was a wonderful sermon. What do you mean, a wonderful sermon? He said, the devil's been hitting me for the last 2 weeks. Now I say, God says, hit Chadwick there. He needs a bit of stuff knocking up in there. and then hit Chadwick this way. You won't knock him out of shape, you knock him into shape. Huh? Don't you ever sing a hymn, hidden in the hollow of his blessed hand, never foe can follow, never traitor stand? Do you really believe, or is it just a little theological thing stuffed in your head? Do you believe your life is hid with Christ in God? Doesn't matter how tough the road is. One of the best modern hymns in America was written by a woman that had a terrible, terrible life of sickness. But she wrote a hymn, "He giveth more grace as the burdens go greater." Do you know that? How many know it? Would you like to sing it for us?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He giveth more grace as the burdens go greater. He giveth more strength as the labours increase. Trial his affliction, he addeth his mercy. To multiplied trials is multiplied praise. Lord, give me more strength. Why give you more strength? You're not carrying any load. When you get to the situation where you need the strength, He'll give you all the strength you need. He'll give you the wisdom you need. He'll give you the vision you need. You see, it takes God an awful long while to mature us. I know, because I've been on the road a long while. I got saved when I was 14. I'm 79. And you know what? I haven't arrived yet. Oh, when I was your age, I had. When I was your age, I knew everything. I pitied my father. He wasn't very well educated. But after I got educated, I envied my father. So simple, so pure, so passionate, so prayerful. I never saw a preacher weep. My daddy would get down and groan and weep and travail for lost men and women. He was a big husky man, about 5 feet 11, and proportionately built. And I began to realize that you don't get smart just, well, you can get smart. See, we confuse knowledge with wisdom.
Yeah.
But knowledge isn't wisdom.
Right.
Wisdom is knowing how to apply knowledge, for one thing.
Yeah.
I've got a son, got an earned PhD. His wife has an earned PhD. They're very, very smart. I smiled the other day. I said to Martha, I see people are paying $10,000 to have dinner with Princess Di and Prince Charles. Our son in West Africa got an invitation for nothing, and he wouldn't go. You see, I mean, you look down on royalty when you're a child of a king. No, but there's a wisdom which is from above, which supersedes all the wisdom of men. The 3 Hebrew children were burned and burned. No, they were not burned at all. All the fire did was burn off the shackles the world put on them. Don't the beast and the prophet go down into the pit, and they burn and burn and burn for 1,000 years, and they're still as correct as the same as when they went in? You know, again, let me say this cliche, I like it, because I didn't write it, but I like it. You know, Christianity is not, N-O-T, not been weighed in the balances and found wanting. It's been tried, found difficult, and rejected. Again, Jesus isn't looking for you to bring all your lousy sins to Him. What do you think He does with them? He wants you. He wants your heart, He wants your mind, He wants your will, He wants your emotions. Every part of you to be filled with God. Let me tell you the company, if you go to hell, they're all listed here. I'll read it for you. Revelation 21 and verse 7 says, He that overcometh shall inherit all things. You know, with such sloppy theology, everybody that's saved is going to be in the bride of Christ. Don't believe it for a minute. I don't believe that. How did God make a bride for Adam? Did He take all of Adam? He took a part of Adam. And when Jesus comes for the bride, He's not coming for every believer, I'm assured of that. What makes us get so arrogant and feel so secure that we're so holy and wonderful? Listen, if you can't stand an extra long sermon, if you hear me often enough, you'll hear them. If you get uncomfortable after an hour's preaching, what in God's name are you going to do in the millennium or in eternity? I preached in a fashionable church out east some years ago. First Sunday morning, 5 minutes to 12, the lady goes like this, so nice. And she got up and walked out. She did the next Sunday morning. I said to Pastor, that old girl went down again this morning. Oh, she's done that for the last 5 years. I said, well, she won't do it once again. Well, what will you do? I said, I'll speak with her. 5 minutes to 12, the third Sunday, she got up to walk. I said, hey, lady. Where are you going? She said. I said, lady, if you can't stand an hour in the presence of God, what are you going to do in eternity? I know you walk out every Sunday. What are you going to do to heaven? You get bored with angels, you get bored with angels, you get bored with worship, you get bored with adoration, you get bored with the blazing holiness of God. Where are you going to walk out to? Hell? It's the only alternative you have. I preached all next week. She never came once to hear me. Some people are easily offended. Do you know what I did the other day? The snobs were being snobbish to the snobs down there. Because to have dinner with the prince and his girlfriend or his wife, $10,000. To have your photographs taken, was it 5 or 50? 50,000. Now listen, you can have yours taken with me this week for $50, never mind 50,000. But imagine $50,000 to have your picture taken. I remember we were working in Teen Challenge 20 years ago. We went at midnight to the Opera House. It's not the same one today. We got there, men were coming out. They had their toppers, My Rolls is over there. And they were bringing Rolls Royces and all the cars you can imagine. And the ladies were there sparkling with diamonds. Do you know why? They rented them the day before. Trailing mink and rabbit and all kinds of furs they had on. Oh, yeah. Snobbish. Isn't there a social register in America with 400 outstanding people, families? Can you imagine those people waking up in hell with harlots and thieves and the underworld? There are no tears in heaven and there are no smiles in hell. There's no sorrow in heaven, there's no joy in hell. I'll tell you who lives in hell. The fearful, the unbelievers, the abominable, the murderers, the whoremongers, the sorcerers, the liars. They all have their part in the lake which burneth with fire. And in chapter 22:15 of Revelation it says, without are dogs, and sorcerers, and whoremongers, and murderers, and idolaters, and whoso loveth and maketh a lie. I've said to you often, I say it again tonight. One of the tragedies of modern Christianity, we've lost sight of the holiness of God. I don't care what meeting you go to. How often do you go tiptoeing out of the sanctuary because you will be overwhelmed with God's holiness, God's majesty, God's purity? And because we've lost sight of the holiness of God, we've lost sight of the sinfulness of men. These men are going to be in eternal rebellion forever and ever. In heaven they're going to sing with singing you've never had no idea what it's like. And 144,000 harps. In heaven they sing the song of Moses and of the Lamb. What do they sing in hell, I'll tell you. They sing the end of chapter 8 of Jeremiah. The harvest is past, the summer is ended, and we're not saved. We talk about Jonathan Edwards. No one hardly ever mentions his brother-in-law, Aaron Burr. One of the great scholars of the day. Aaron Burr missed the presidency of the United States by one vote. Years afterwards, somebody said to him, well, Mr. Burr, you almost became the President of the United States. You missed it by one vote, didn't you? But I want to tell you something. There's something far greater than being a President of the United States. What is that? Well, you can be a Christian. No, I can't. Yes, you can. I can't. Yes, you can. Whosoever will may come. No, he said, that's not for me. It's for everybody. No, it isn't. Well, why isn't it, Mr. Burr? I missed the presidency of the United States by one vote, sure. I was in a gospel meeting X number of years ago. And the evangelist said there's one more people should come to this altar today. And I was a man, I didn't go. You should come. Today, if you will hear it, we say to people, don't put it off. If you get an invitation to have dinner at the White House next Monday at 1 o'clock, will you say, I'm sorry I can't come, but I'll come Thursday at 1? We treat God as though he's an errand boy. God doesn't owe a thing to anybody in this room tonight. He's pled with you, he's urged you, he's called you to holiness.